Hey everyone, I'm Lee from Food for Adventures, and let's make some coffee and beignets. First thing about making coffee at base camp or at the campground is that we want to get some water going and roaring. And we are actually going to use our French press method today. And we already have our pre-measured coffee in the bottom, 8 scoops of grinded coffee. And we're going to transfer this hot water into the French press. Now before we press the coffee down, we're going to let it steep for about 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to set that aside. And let's make some Cafe Du Monde beignets. First thing we want to do, which is the most time-consuming process of making beignets, is heating our oil up at camp. We have a cast iron skillet, and you can use vegetable oil, but we're using peanut oil today just for the taste and the higher consistency. And we're going to go ahead and get our oil heated. I like to fill up my skillet less than about 1/4 inch, just because you don't want too much oil, but you want enough so the beignets can actually float in the oil as they're frying. And I always like to move the handle out of my way while I'm cooking, just because when there's hot oil and moving around the camp kitchen, it's always safe practice. So we got our oil heating up nicely. First thing we want to do is take our Cafe Du Monde mix and properly mix it with 7 ounces of water with 2 cups of mix. Growing up outside of New Orleans, this is one of my favorite things. Favorite breakfasts, lunch, dinner, dessert, we ate it all time. Next thing we want to do is go ahead and mix the mix, and what you want is to form a sticky dough. Reminds me of an artisan pizza dough. Really sticky, kind of airy. That's looking good. Next thing we're going to do here is prepare our area. I'm going to go and flour it because that's the most important part before we put the dough down. Normally when you're at a campground, you have a picnic table or your camp table to work with, but thankfully here from SylvanSport, we have this beautiful setup. Plenty of surface area, so it's going to make making beignets a lot easier here. So, and you want to make sure you don't want to use too much. It's a healthy balance between flouring the surface so nothing gets too stuck on it, and also making sure too much flour don't go into the recipe. At home versus campground, scenarios are different. A little bit more flour is used outside because of the moisture in the air, so don't be afraid to use it. But just don't stump your toe in it, as we like to say in the South. Getting our mix back out, stirring it, making sure it's still alive. And then next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and get our hands dirty. And what I like to do is put a little bit of flour in my hands before we get into this dough, because again, it is a sticky dough. So take a little flour my hands, get this out. Let's go ahead and get this on the flour. Don't be afraid to get messy with it. If you're getting messy, you know you're making beignets the right way and everything. Cool, as we're working on our beignet mix, we'll be checking the oil here soon. And I can smell that coffee steeping perfectly, so I cannot wait to pour me a cup of that, because it's only classic that beignets are served with coffee. Before we pin roll, pro tip is actually flouring your pin roll. And this is actually one that's been handed down from my family a couple generations, so still in the use. And what you want to do is get this flattened out to about 1/8 inch thick. And those little balls that you'll come off, those are great to actually have make odd funny shapes, and then also to test the oil here in just a second. Now traditionally they're cut into rectangles, some people do triangles. I think it's fun to do any shape. They're going to fry and puff up no matter what shape they're in. And first thing I'm going to do is test the oil and see if it's hot enough. And some of the little balls that have came off, I just throw it into the oil. And if you can hear that sizzle and see that fry, I think it's time to throw our beignets into there. So the most important thing about this is being careful around the hot oil. Obviously, you don't want to throw the beignets in there. You kind of want to set them in there, almost like a piece of fish. But basically, and it's all about time now. I usually, depending on my skillet, I don't like to overwhelm myself, so I'm going to go with 3 at a time. And as you can tell right now, the oil's frying them perfectly. They're already floating. And it's going to take anywhere between 15 to 30 seconds, and 30 seconds is actually pushing it, so depending how dark or crispy you like them. They're golden brown. I like the way they look. They're puffy. We're going to get them to the last step and the most important step. So what I like to do is usually have something with a paper napkin. I'm gonna set them in there. Now we're gonna bathe them in this powdered sugar right here. I like to use a sifter. And please don't be that person that lightly coats the beignets. Give them a home, give them a blanket and powdered sugar, because that's where they belong. And so, once we got them coated, is to check on our coffee. And now, we enjoy a fresh beignet at the campground. Pro tip, don't inhale when you bite the beignet. You'll regret it. A little taste of New Orleans here in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm Lee with Food for Adventures, and this is Backcountry Beignets.